You probably think you're being kind to yourself by avoiding difficult feelings. This is a common but deeply damaging mental framework. It leads directly to more anxiety and greater feelings of depression. Science is now showing us a surprising truth. The very things you do to feel better often make your struggles worse. We are going to explore this in depth today. Imagine a young person overwhelmed by life's demands. They might feel like a failure when they stumble. Their inner voice shouts criticisms, magnifying every mistake. This is a widespread experience for many. We are taught to be tough, to push through pain. But what if that toughness is actually a form of self-neglect? A recent study published in June of 2024 offers a stark warning. Researchers explored the connections between reversed self-compassion and symptoms of anxiety and depression in young people. The findings are quite significant. They discovered a strong inverse relationship. This means when self-compassion goes down, anxiety and depression symptoms go up dramatically. It's not just a slight correlation, it's a powerful link. The study, titled "On the Edge of Psychopathology: Strong Relations Between Reversed Self-Compassion and Symptoms of Anxiety and Depression in Young People," by Muris P. and colleagues, looked at a large group of adolescents. They used validated psychological assessments to measure both self-compassion and levels of anxiety and depression. What they found was consistent across the board. Those who were hardest on themselves, who treated themselves with constant judgment, were also experiencing the most intense feelings of worry and sadness. It's a vicious cycle that traps so many. Why do so many people fail to cultivate genuine self-compassion? It often stems from a misunderstanding of what it truly means. Many believe self-compassion is about self-pity or making excuses for poor behavior. This couldn't be further from the truth, according to the research. True self-compassion involves acknowledging your suffering with kindness and understanding. It's about recognizing that everyone experiences pain and imperfection. Think about a close friend who is going through a difficult time. You would likely offer them comfort, empathy, and support, right? You wouldn't berate them for their struggles. Yet, when we face our own challenges, our inner dialogue often shifts dramatically. We become our harshest critic, amplifying our perceived flaws and mistakes. This is the essence of reversed self-compassion. The study highlighted that this reversed approach is not just ineffective, it's actively detrimental. It creates a fertile ground for anxiety and depression to flourish. It's like watering weeds and expecting a garden to bloom. One of the key discoveries was the concept of perceived failure among young individuals. When they didn't meet their own high expectations, their self-critical thoughts intensified. This led to a greater sense of inadequacy. This feeling of inadequacy then fueled their anxiety about future performance. They worried they would fail again, perpetuating the cycle. The depression often followed as a consequence of prolonged feelings of hopelessness. The researchers found that individuals with low self-compassion were more likely to ruminate on negative experiences. They would replay mistakes over and over, finding no escape. This constant mental rehashing is exhausting. It's like being stuck in a loop, constantly replaying a bad movie in your mind. Each viewing makes the images even more vivid and painful. This is what happens when you lack a compassionate inner voice. The impact on mental health is profound. Anxiety often manifests as constant worry, restlessness, and physical symptoms like a racing heart. Depression can present as persistent sadness, loss of interest, and fatigue. The study provides concrete data to support this. They observed that higher scores on self-criticism scales directly correlated with higher scores on anxiety and depression scales. The pattern was undeniable. This is not about being weak or making excuses. It is about understanding a fundamental aspect of human psychology. Our relationship with ourselves is a primary driver of our emotional well-being. Many people believe that being tough on themselves is what motivates them to achieve. They think that constant self-criticism is a necessary tool for improvement. This belief is deeply ingrained for some. However, the science suggests the opposite is true. While striving for goals is important, the way we approach setbacks is critical. Harsh self-judgment erodes resilience and motivation. Imagine trying to build a house with a hammer that keeps breaking. You would struggle to make progress. Similarly, using self-criticism as your primary tool for self-improvement will ultimately break down your spirit. The study's authors point to the work of Dr. Kristin Neff, a pioneer in self-compassion research. Her work has consistently shown that self-compassion is not about letting yourself off the hook. It is about responding to your own suffering with the same kindness you would offer a friend. The core components of self-compassion, as defined by Neff, are self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Let's break these down. Self-kindness involves being warm and understanding toward ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate. It means not ignoring our pain or beating ourselves up with self-criticism. It's about actively soothing ourselves. Common humanity recognizes that suffering and personal inadequacy are part of the shared human experience. We are not alone in our struggles. Everyone experiences difficulties. This helps to reduce feelings of isolation. Mindfulness involves being aware of our thoughts and feelings without judgment. It means observing our pain without suppressing it or becoming overwhelmed by it. It's about being present with our experience. The study by Muris P. and colleagues specifically focused on the absence or reversal of these elements. They found that when self-kindness was replaced by self-criticism, common humanity was replaced by feelings of isolation, and mindfulness was replaced by rumination, anxiety, and depression soared. This is the crucial insight that many miss. They are practicing self-criticism, believing it is necessary for growth. They are essentially punishing themselves for being human. Consider a scenario. A student receives a lower grade than expected on an important exam. Their typical reaction might be, "I'm so stupid, I'll never be good enough." This is reversed self-compassion. A self-compassionate response would be, "This grade is disappointing and it's okay to feel that. I studied hard, but perhaps I could approach studying differently next time. What can I learn from this experience?" The study found that young people who exhibited this latter approach, the self-compassionate one, reported significantly lower levels of anxiety and depression. They were able to bounce back from setbacks more effectively. They built resilience. The mechanism is fascinating. When you are self-critical, your brain perceives a threat. This triggers the fight-or-flight response, leading to increased cortisol levels and a heightened state of anxiety. It's like your own mind is constantly sounding an alarm. Conversely, when you practice self-compassion, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes relaxation and well-being. It's like a calming balm for your nervous system. Your brain learns to trust that you are safe. The researchers noted that this reversed self-compassion is often learned behavior. It can be passed down from parents, peers, or absorbed from societal pressures. We internalize these critical voices. Think about the messages we receive from media and culture. There's often an emphasis on perfection and constant achievement. Anything less can be perceived as failure. This creates an environment where self-criticism thrives. The study provides a clear statistical link. For every point increase in reversed self-compassion, there was a corresponding increase in reported anxiety and depression symptoms. This is not speculation, it is data. One real-life example illustrates this powerfully. Sarah, a 23-year-old graphic designer, struggled with crippling anxiety. She constantly worried about her work performance, replaying every perceived mistake. She would spend hours agonizing over minor design choices, convinced they would lead to her being fired. Her inner monologue was relentless. "You're not good enough. They'll find out you're a fraud." This constant self-attack left her exhausted and fearful. She avoided social situations and found it hard to concentrate on her projects. Her anxiety was impacting every aspect of her life. Sarah had tried various approaches to manage her anxiety. She read self-help books and even tried mindfulness exercises, but nothing seemed to stick. She felt stuck in a cycle of worry. Then she stumbled upon research on self-compassion. Initially, she was skeptical. "How can being nice to myself help when I'm clearly failing?" she thought. Following the guidance of a therapist who specialized in self-compassion, Sarah began to practice. She started by acknowledging her anxiety without judgment. She would tell herself, "It's understandable to feel anxious when you're worried about your work. Many people feel this way." This simple shift was revolutionary for her. Instead of berating herself for feeling anxious, she offered herself kindness. She recognized that her struggle was part of being human. Over time, Sarah began to notice a difference. The intensity of her anxiety lessened. She no longer felt the need to constantly ruminate on her perceived failures. She started to approach her work with a more balanced perspective. If she made a mistake, she would acknowledge it, learn from it, and move on, rather than letting it spiral into a crisis of self-worth. Within 6 months, Sarah reported a 50% reduction in her anxiety symptoms. She was able to engage more fully in her work and social life. She had found a way to quiet her inner critic. Her measurable result was significant. Her therapist noted a marked decrease in her self-reported anxiety levels and a corresponding increase in her overall sense of well-being. She had transformed her mental framework. The twist here is that the very thing you might be avoiding, your pain and imperfections, is what you need to embrace with kindness. Trying to suppress or deny your struggles only amplifies them. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It will always pop back up. The science behind this is rooted in our evolutionary psychology. Our brains are wired for survival. When we perceive ourselves as failing or inadequate, our ancient threat detection system kicks in. This system is designed to protect us from danger. In modern life, however, this system often misinterprets our internal struggles as external threats. Our own thoughts become the perceived danger. Reversed self-compassion essentially signals to your brain that you are a threat to yourself. This keeps you in a perpetual state of alarm. Your nervous system is constantly on high alert. The study highlights 3 specific mistakes that most people make when trying to deal with anxiety and depression, often stemming from this reversed self-compassion. The first mistake is believing that self-criticism is a motivator. Many people think that if they don't push themselves hard with negative self-talk, they will become lazy. They see criticism as a necessary spur. This is a false dichotomy. While ambition is valuable, the fuel for that ambition should come from a place of self-acceptance, not self-condemnation. True motivation arises from a desire to grow and learn, not from a fear of punishment. The second mistake is avoiding difficult emotions. When faced with sadness, fear, or disappointment, the instinct for many is to push these feelings away. They might distract themselves, numb their feelings, or intellectualize them. However, emotions are like messengers. When you ignore them, they tend to get louder. Suppressing these feelings can lead to them festering and manifesting as anxiety or depression. It's like trying to ignore a persistent cough. It doesn't go away on its own. The third mistake is treating your inner critic as an authority. You likely have a voice inside your head that is constantly pointing out your flaws. You might believe everything this voice says. This inner critic often operates on outdated information or irrational beliefs. It doesn't have your best interests at heart. It is often a product of past experiences and learned patterns of thought. The concrete method to cultivate genuine self-compassion, as supported by this research, is a practice of mindful self-kindness. It's about actively shifting your internal dialogue. Today, I want you to commit to one single action. When you notice yourself being self-critical, pause for a moment. Acknowledge the critical thought without judgment. Then ask yourself, what would I say to a dear friend who was experiencing this same situation? Offer yourself those same words of comfort and understanding. It might feel awkward at first. Your inner critic will likely push back. That is to be expected. The key is to gently persist. This is not about perfection. It is about consistent effort. Each time you choose kindness over criticism, you are rewiring your brain. You are building a stronger foundation for your mental well-being. The impact of this shift is profound. It's not a quick fix, but a sustainable path to greater peace. It's about creating a sanctuary within yourself. The science is clear. A lack of self-compassion creates a fertile ground for anxiety and depression. The study by Muris P. and colleagues in 2024 provides compelling evidence. They found that reversed self-compassion is a significant predictor of psychological distress. This means that how you treat yourself is directly influencing how you feel. This is not about blaming yourself for feeling anxious or depressed. It is about empowering yourself with a new understanding. You have the ability to change your internal landscape. The journey begins with self-awareness. It begins with recognizing the patterns of self-criticism that hold you back. It begins with the courage to offer yourself the same kindness you would offer others. The research suggests that this is not a superficial change. It is a fundamental shift in your relationship with yourself. This shift has a tangible impact on your mental health. Think about it. If your own mind is a source of constant judgment, how can you ever feel truly at ease? If your inner voice is always telling you that you are not enough, how can you build confidence? The answer, as revealed by this science, is that you cannot. The reversed self-compassion creates a barrier to genuine well-being. It is a self-imposed limitation. The study also touched upon the role of social comparison. Young people who frequently compare themselves to others, often on social media, are more prone to self-criticism. They see curated highlights of others' lives and judge their own realities against them. This creates a sense of inadequacy that fuels the reversed self-compassion cycle. They feel they are falling short, and their inner critic agrees. This leads to increased anxiety and depressive symptoms. The researchers emphasize that cultivating self-compassion can act as an antidote to this. By focusing on your own journey and accepting your imperfections, you become less vulnerable to the pressures of comparison. This is why the practice of common humanity is so important. Recognizing that everyone struggles, that everyone has moments of doubt and failure, helps to dismantle the illusion of perfect lives. When you understand that your struggles are part of being human, you are less likely to isolate yourself with your pain. You can connect with others on a deeper level. This connection is a powerful buffer against anxiety and depression. The science is not suggesting that you should ignore your problems or avoid taking responsibility for your actions. It is about changing the way you approach these challenges. It's about shifting from a place of self-punishment to a place of self-support. It's about recognizing your inherent worth, regardless of your achievements or failures. The study's findings are a call to action. They urge us to re-examine our internal dialogues. They encourage us to cultivate a more nurturing relationship with ourselves. This is not just for young people. This principle applies to everyone at every stage of life. The impact of reversed self-compassion is universal. The tension lies in the fact that many of us are deeply invested in our self-critical patterns. They have become so ingrained that they feel like a part of our identity. Breaking free from these patterns requires conscious effort and a willingness to be vulnerable. It requires us to challenge deeply held beliefs about ourselves. The science from Muris P. and colleagues offers a clear path forward. It provides the evidence and the understanding to make that shift. It illuminates the way out of the cycle of anxiety and depression. We are at the edge of understanding how our internal dialogue shapes our reality. The research is now undeniably showing us the power of self-compassion. The question remains, are you willing to embrace it? Are you ready to silence the inner critic and cultivate a more compassionate relationship with yourself? The answer to that question will define your journey. Let me tell you about Sarah. She was a graphic designer, incredibly talented, but she always felt like she was just barely good enough. Her inner critic was relentless, a constant hum of inadequacy. She'd spend hours agonizing over small design choices, convinced that every client would see the flaws she perceived. This anxiety bled into her personal life too, making her hesitant to try new things or speak up in social situations. She believed that any mistake would confirm her deepest fear, that she was fundamentally incompetent. One evening, scrolling through articles about mental well-being, she stumbled upon a piece discussing self-compassion. The idea of treating herself with the same kindness she offered her friends felt foreign, almost indulgent. Yet, a tiny spark of curiosity ignited. She decided to experiment, starting small. When she'd finish a project, instead of immediately diving into self-criticism, she'd take a deep breath and try to acknowledge the effort she'd put in. Her first conscious attempt at self-compassion was after a particularly grueling client revision. She worked late into the night, feeling utterly drained and convinced the final design was still subpar. Her usual reaction would be to berate herself for not being faster or more creative. This time, however, she paused. She acknowledged the exhaustion, the frustration, and then very softly she said to herself, "This was really tough, and you did your best with the time you had. It's okay to feel tired." The immediate impact wasn't dramatic, but a subtle shift occurred. The usual knot of anxiety in her stomach loosened slightly. Over the next few weeks, she continued this practice. When a project didn't go as planned, she'd focus on the learning opportunity rather than the perceived failure. She started to notice that the intensity of her self-criticism began to diminish. It wasn't a sudden eradication, but more like a dial being turned down. The real test came when she pitched for a major new client. This was a huge opportunity, and the pressure was immense. Her old patterns of self-doubt threatened to resurface with full force. She found herself rehearsing worst-case scenarios, imagining every possible way she could mess up the presentation. Then, she remembered her commitment to self-compassion. Before the meeting, she sat quietly and acknowledged the fear. She didn't try to push it away. Instead, she said, "It's natural to feel nervous about something this important. You've prepared well, and you have valuable skills to offer. Whatever happens, you will learn from this experience." She also reminded herself that many other talented people were likely pitching for the same client, and that her worth wasn't solely dependent on winning this one contract. During the presentation, there was a moment where she stumbled over her words. Her old self would have spiraled into embarrassment and self-recrimination. But this time, she simply took a breath, smiled slightly, and corrected herself. The client didn't even seem to notice. The presentation went well, and to her immense surprise, she won the contract. The measurable result wasn't just the new client. Sarah noticed a significant reduction in her overall anxiety levels. She found herself more willing to take on challenging projects, and her creativity flourished without the constant shadow of self-judgment. She realized that her reversed self-compassion had been a self-imposed ceiling on her potential. By shifting her internal dialogue, she had not only improved her mental state, but also unlocked a new level of professional success. Now let's talk about how this actually works within us. Imagine your mind is like a vast, intricate garden. For most of us, this garden is filled with weeds. These weeds are our negative beliefs, our self-criticism, our doubts. They are tenacious and they grow quickly, choking out the delicate flowers of our confidence and self-worth. When we practice reversed self-compassion, it's like we are constantly watering these weeds. Every time we tell ourselves we're not good enough, every time we replay a mistake and beat ourselves up, we are giving those weeds exactly what they need to thrive. They grow taller, spread wider, and become seemingly impossible to uproot. This is why the anxiety and depression can feel so overwhelming. The weeds have taken over the garden. But when you consciously choose self-compassion, you are essentially planting a new kind of seed. Think of it as planting little sprouts of understanding, acceptance, and kindness. Instead of watering the weeds, you are now selectively watering these new seeds. You are nurturing them, giving them sunlight and care. The truly powerful part of this is that these new sprouts, these seeds of self-compassion, don't just grow alongside the weeds. They begin to actively crowd them out. The kindness and understanding you offer yourself start to create a different kind of environment in your mental garden. The negative beliefs, the self-critical thoughts, they begin to wither because they are no longer being fed. They are being starved by the presence of something much stronger and more nurturing. This isn't about magically making the weeds disappear overnight. The old weeds are still there, remnants of past habits, but their power is significantly diminished. They can't grow as tall, they can't spread as fast, and their presence no longer dominates the entire garden. Your inner landscape begins to shift from a choked, overgrown mess to a space where the flowers of your potential can finally bloom. The more you practice self-compassion, the more you water those seeds, and the more the weeds lose their grip. This process is incredibly effective because it works with our natural tendency to nurture what we give attention to. If you give attention to your flaws, they grow. If you give attention to your strengths and your inherent worth, they grow. It's a fundamental principle of how our minds operate, and it's why self-compassion isn't just a feel-good concept. It's a powerful mechanism for change. Now here's where things get really interesting, a twist that might make you rethink everything you thought you knew about self-improvement. We often approach self-compassion as a tool to make ourselves feel better, to escape from difficult emotions. We think, if I'm kind to myself, I won't feel anxious or sad. And while that's a wonderful outcome, it's not the whole story. The unexpected paradox is that the most profound impact of self-compassion comes not when you're trying to avoid pain, but when you are fully present with it. The science points to this. Self-compassion isn't about numbing or distracting yourself from difficult feelings. It's about offering yourself kindness in the midst of those feelings. Think about the gardener again. We've talked about watering the seeds of kindness. But what if the most potent fertilizer for those seeds isn't the absence of weeds, but the very presence of them? What if the act of acknowledging the weeds, of feeling their prickly texture, of recognizing their stubborn persistence, is precisely what allows the seeds of self-compassion to take root and grow most vibrantly? This is the twist. Self-compassion is not a shield against suffering. It is a way of engaging with suffering that transforms it. When you face a difficult emotion like intense anxiety or deep disappointment, your natural instinct is to push it away, to fight it, to wish it would disappear. This is where reversed self-compassion thrives. It says, you shouldn't be feeling this. You're weak for feeling this, get over it. But when you practice true self-compassion, you do the opposite. You acknowledge the feeling, even the uncomfortable ones. You say, this is really hard right now. I am feeling a lot of anxiety. It hurts. And then, with that acknowledgement, you offer yourself kindness. You offer yourself understanding, as if you were comforting a dear friend who is going through the same thing. This is the crucial point that the research is highlighting. The strength of self-compassion isn't in its ability to prevent pain, but in its ability to create a safe internal space for that pain to exist without consuming you. It's like building a sturdy, warm shelter in the middle of a storm. The storm is still raging, but you are no longer exposed and vulnerable to its full force. You can be present with the storm, observe it, and know that you have a place of refuge within yourself. This is why the study by Muris P. and colleagues on reversed self-compassion and symptoms of anxiety and depression is so vital. It shows that when we try to avoid our negative feelings by criticizing ourselves, we actually amplify them. We create a feedback loop of suffering. But when we offer ourselves kindness, even when we feel terrible, we interrupt that loop. We create a space for healing. So, the unanswered question from earlier, the one about whether you are willing to embrace self-compassion, has a deeper layer. It's not just about wanting to feel better. It's about being willing to feel difficult things, to be vulnerable, and to offer yourself grace even when you feel you don't deserve it. It's about understanding that your capacity for kindness towards yourself is not a sign of weakness, but a profound source of resilience. This leads us to a new set of questions, doesn't it? If self-compassion isn't about avoiding pain, but about embracing it with kindness, how do we truly learn to do that? How do we move beyond the intellectual understanding and into the lived experience of offering ourselves genuine comfort? Is it possible that the very things we try hardest to hide about ourselves are the very things that, when met with compassion, hold the most power to transform us? The journey is far from over, and the most profound discoveries often lie just beyond our current understanding. Let me tell you about Sarah. She was a woman caught in a relentless cycle of self-criticism, particularly around her career. She felt like she was constantly falling short, never quite measuring up to the expectations she imagined others had for her, and certainly not to the impossible standards she held for herself. Every perceived mistake, every missed deadline, every less-than-perfect presentation would be replayed endlessly in her mind, accompanied by a harsh inner monologue. "You're not smart enough," it would whisper. "You're going to fail." This internal soundtrack was so loud it often drowned out any genuine feedback or recognition of her accomplishments. She'd spend hours agonizing over emails, convinced she'd worded them poorly, or lie awake at night replaying conversations, certain she'd said the wrong thing. This constant barrage of negativity was exhausting, leaving her feeling drained and perpetually anxious. She believed deeply that this self-punishment was necessary, a way to motivate herself to do better, to avoid future failures. She thought if she let herself off the hook even a little, she would descend into complacency and mediocrity. This belief system was a heavy anchor, dragging her down and preventing her from truly enjoying her successes or learning from her setbacks in a healthy way. Her work performance, as you might imagine, began to suffer not because she lacked talent or capability, but because the sheer mental energy spent on self-recrimination left little room for focused effort and creative problem-solving. She'd become hesitant to take on new challenges, fearing the inevitable self-blame that would follow any deviation from perfection. She'd avoid speaking up in meetings, convinced her ideas weren't good enough, and she'd often procrastinate on important tasks because the thought of starting them and potentially failing was too overwhelming. Her anxiety levels were through the roof, manifesting as sleepless nights, a constant knot in her stomach, and a general feeling of being on edge. She was living in a state of perpetual internal conflict, a war she was waging against herself. One day, Sarah attended a workshop on emotional intelligence. The facilitator, a warm and insightful woman, spoke about self-compassion not as a weakness, but as a source of strength. Sarah, steeped in her belief that self-criticism was the only path to improvement, was initially skeptical. It sounded too soft, too easy, but the facilitator's gentle explanation resonated. She described self-compassion as treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a dear friend who was struggling. She emphasized that it wasn't about condoning mistakes or lowering standards. It was about acknowledging your humanity, your inherent worth, and your capacity for imperfection. This was a radical idea for Sarah. The turning point for Sarah came after a particularly brutal performance review. Despite her efforts, her boss had pointed out several areas where she could improve, and the familiar chorus of self-criticism immediately kicked in. Instead of spiraling into despair, however, a flicker of the workshop's message surfaced. She remembered the facilitator's words. When a friend is hurting, what do? You offer comfort, not condemnation. For the first time, Sarah consciously chose a different response. Instead of replaying her boss's criticisms and berating herself, she acknowledged the sting. She allowed herself to feel the disappointment and the fear. Then, she consciously asked herself, what would I say to my best friend if they received this feedback? Her inner dialogue shifted. Instead of "I'm a failure," she found herself thinking, "This feedback is tough to hear, and it's okay to feel discouraged, but it doesn't define my entire worth. What can I learn from this?" She then committed to a concrete action plan, not out of self-loathing, but out of a desire for growth. She decided to take a specific online course to address one of the feedback points and to schedule regular check-ins with her manager to track her progress. She also made a pact with herself to celebrate small wins along the way, something she had never done before. The result was not an overnight transformation, but a gradual, profound shift. Over the next few months, Sarah noticed a significant decrease in her anxiety levels. She found herself more willing to take on new projects, less paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. When setbacks did occur, she was able to approach them with a more balanced perspective. She could acknowledge the difficulty, learn from the experience, and move forward without getting stuck in a cycle of self-blame. Her colleagues noticed a change too. She was more engaged in meetings, more confident in her contributions, and her overall productivity increased. Her boss, in turn, saw her initiative and her improved performance, and their subsequent reviews were much more positive. Sarah's internal world had changed, and that change rippled outward, impacting every aspect of her professional life. She hadn't stopped caring about her performance, but she had fundamentally altered her relationship with herself, replacing harsh judgment with supportive understanding. Now let's explore how this works, not just in Sarah's life, but in our very wiring. Think of your brain as a sophisticated garden. When you're stuck in self-criticism, it's like you've got a relentless gardener who only knows how to plant weeds. Every perceived flaw, every mistake, every moment of vulnerability becomes fertile ground for these weeds to sprout and spread. This gardener is always on high alert, constantly scanning for imperfections, and whenever it finds one, it enthusiastically plants another weed. These weeds are the negative thoughts, the harsh judgments, the feelings of inadequacy. They choke out the healthy plants, the ones representing your strengths, your potential, your innate goodness. The mechanism is quite powerful, actually. When you experience stress or perceive a threat, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, becomes highly active. In a state of self-criticism, this alarm is constantly being triggered by your own thoughts. This leads to the release of stress hormones like cortisol, which can impair cognitive function and increase feelings of anxiety and depression. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought and decision-making, gets hijacked by the emotional response. It's like the guard dogs are barking so loudly, the commander in the control room can't hear any important reports. This constant state of alert makes it incredibly difficult to learn, to adapt, or to feel safe. Self-compassion, on the other hand, introduces a different kind of gardener. This gardener doesn't ignore the weeds, but it also doesn't frantically try to rip them out, which often just makes the soil more disturbed. Instead, this gardener understands that weeds are a natural part of any garden. It acknowledges their presence, perhaps even gently removes a few that are truly overwhelming, but its primary focus is on nurturing the healthy plants. It waters them, gives them sunlight, and provides rich soil. This gardener uses the very same soil where the weeds are growing, but instead of planting more weeds, it plants flowers and nourishing vegetables. This metaphor highlights the crucial point. The negative experiences and perceived flaws aren't eliminated by self-compassion. Instead, they are acknowledged and integrated into a more supportive internal environment. When you practice self-compassion, you activate different neural pathways. You engage your parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest system, which counteracts the fight or flight response of the sympathetic nervous system. This helps to lower cortisol levels, allowing your prefrontal cortex to function more effectively. You're essentially calming the alarm system and giving your rational mind a chance to operate. You begin to cultivate a sense of safety within yourself, which is foundational for growth and well-being. It's like turning down the volume on the barking guard dogs and allowing the commander to receive clear intelligence. The unexpected twist in all of this, the paradox that truly shifts our perspective, is that the very things we fear most about ourselves, the aspects we try to hide and criticize, are often the fertile ground for our greatest growth when met with compassion. We believe that if we are not constantly vigilant against our flaws, we will be consumed by them. We think that acknowledging our vulnerability is an invitation for disaster. But the research and the lived experiences of people like Sarah show us the opposite. The more we try to suppress or deny our negative qualities, the more power they hold over us. They fester in the dark, growing stronger through our resistance. Think about it this way. Imagine you have a shadow that follows you everywhere. Your instinct is to run away from it, to try and outrun it. But the faster you run, the more it seems to stretch and distort. It's always there, a constant reminder of what you're trying to escape. Now, what if you turned around and simply acknowledged the shadow? You didn't try to fight it or banish it. You just said, "Hello, shadow, I see you." And in that moment of acknowledgement, something profound happens. The shadow doesn't disappear, but it stops being a terrifying monster. It becomes a part of you, a natural consequence of the light. It loses its power to frighten you because you are no longer in a battle with it. This is the paradox of self-compassion. It doesn't make your struggles vanish, but it dissolves their power over you. The very things that make you feel ashamed or inadequate, when embraced with kindness, can become sources of wisdom and strength. Your past mistakes, your perceived failures, your moments of weakness, these are not blemishes to be erased, but chapters in your story that, when read with compassion, offer profound lessons. The unanswered question from earlier, about whether you are willing to embrace self-compassion, has a deeper layer now. It's not just about being willing to feel difficult things. It's about being willing to see the beauty and the potential for growth within those difficult things, even the ones you've been desperately trying to ignore. It's about understanding that your capacity for self-kindness is not a permission slip for mediocrity, but the very fuel for genuine resilience and authentic living. So the journey continues, doesn't it? We've seen how Sarah transformed her relationship with herself and her career by shifting from self-criticism to self-compassion. We've explored the neurological underpinnings, likening our brains to gardens tended by different kinds of gardeners. And we've uncovered the powerful paradox that our perceived flaws, when met with kindness, can become our greatest assets. But the question remains, how do we cultivate that compassionate gardener within ourselves when the weeds of self-doubt seem so deeply rooted? How do we move from understanding this concept intellectually to embodying it when the old habits of self-attack are so ingrained? Is it truly possible to forgive ourselves for past transgressions and embrace a future free from the shackles of self-judgment? The path forward is not always clear, and the whispers of doubt can be persistent, but the seeds of change have been sown. There are 3 common traps people fall into when they first start exploring this idea of self-compassion. The first one is believing self-compassion means letting yourself off the hook for everything. You might think, if I'm kind to myself, then I won't have to try hard anymore. This is a deeply flawed mental framework that actually sabotages your growth. It's like telling a student, it's okay if you don't study for the test, just be nice to yourself about it. That student will likely fail, not because they were being kind to themselves, but because they were being neglectful. True self-compassion isn't about excusing bad behavior or avoiding responsibility. It's about acknowledging your humanity, including your mistakes, and then using that understanding to learn and do better. It's about recognizing that you, like everyone else, are imperfect and prone to error, and that this imperfection is not a reason for harsh judgment but for gentle guidance. The second mistake is confusing self-compassion with self-pity. Self-pity is when you wallow in your suffering, feeling like you're the only one going through something difficult. It's a passive state of helplessness, where you just feel sorry for yourself and don't take any action. Self-compassion, on the other hand, is an active, empowering response to suffering. It involves recognizing that suffering is a part of the human experience, that you are not alone in your struggles, and then offering yourself the same kindness and understanding you would offer a dear friend. Think about a time you saw a friend going through a tough breakup. You probably wouldn't tell them, "Oh, you poor thing, you'll never find love again." Instead, you'd offer comfort, support, and encouragement, reminding them of their worth and their ability to heal. Self-compassion is about turning that same supportive voice inward. It's not about dwelling on how bad things are. It's about acknowledging the pain and then actively choosing to care for yourself through it. This distinction is crucial because without it, you can easily get stuck in a cycle of feeling sorry for yourself, which only deepens your sense of isolation and despair. The third common pitfall is the belief that self-compassion is a sign of weakness. Many of us have been conditioned to believe that toughness, stoicism, and emotional resilience come from suppressing our feelings and pushing through pain without acknowledging it. We see vulnerability as a chasm waiting to swallow us whole. This deeply ingrained societal narrative suggests that admitting you're struggling or hurting is somehow failing at being strong. However, the scientific evidence, like the study published in Clinical Child and Family Psychology Review, points to the exact opposite. True strength, the kind that allows you to navigate life's inevitable challenges with grace and resilience, actually comes from understanding and accepting your own vulnerabilities. It's the courage to be imperfect, to admit when you're not okay, and to extend kindness to yourself in those moments that builds genuine fortitude. It's like a muscle. The more you exercise your capacity for self-compassion, the stronger your emotional resilience becomes. Trying to be tough by ignoring your pain is like trying to build a strong house on a crumbling foundation. Eventually, it will fall. Self-compassion, conversely, is like reinforcing that foundation, allowing you to build something truly enduring. Now let's talk about how to actually build this compassionate inner voice. It's not a magical switch you can flip, but a practice, a skill that can be developed. The first concrete step is to cultivate mindfulness. This means paying attention to your thoughts and feelings in the present moment, without judgment. When you notice that critical voice start to chime in, the one that tells you you're not good enough or that you've made a terrible mistake, simply acknowledge it. You can even give it a name, like the inner critic, to create a little distance. Say to yourself, "Ah, there's my inner critic again." This act of noticing, of observing your thoughts without immediately believing them or acting on them, is the very first layer of self-compassion. It's about creating a space between the thought and your reaction to it. Once you've noticed the critical thought, the next step is to recognize your common humanity. This is where you remind yourself that suffering, imperfection, and making mistakes are universal experiences. You are not an anomaly. You are part of the human tapestry. You can say to yourself, "This is hard right now, but everyone struggles sometimes. I'm not alone in feeling this way." This simple reminder can be incredibly powerful in dissolving feelings of isolation and shame. It shifts your perspective from, "Why is this happening to me?" to "This is a part of being human, and I can navigate it." Think about the last time you felt embarrassed about something. It's easy to believe you're the only one who has ever done something so awkward. But if you pause and consider, you'll realize that nearly everyone has experienced moments that make them cringe. This shared experience is what connects us. The third step, and perhaps the most challenging, is to offer yourself kindness. This means actively soothing yourself, speaking to yourself in a warm, supportive, and understanding tone. Imagine what you would say to a dear friend who was going through the exact same situation you are. You wouldn't berate them. You would offer comfort and encouragement. So, when you notice yourself struggling, ask yourself, "What do I need right now?" It might be a moment of quiet reflection, a comforting word, or even a simple acknowledgement of your pain. You can place a hand over your heart, take a few deep breaths, and say, "This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself in this moment." This is not about wishing the pain away, but about actively choosing to respond to yourself with care and gentleness, rather than with harsh self-criticism. It's about learning to be your own best ally. Let's look at a quick example of how this can play out in real life. Consider Mark, a graphic designer who was terrified of presenting his work to clients. Every time he had to do it, his palms would sweat, his heart would race, and a barrage of negative thoughts would flood his mind. "They're going to hate it. I'm not good enough. They'll see I'm a fraud." This fear led him to avoid client presentations whenever possible, which was hindering his career advancement. He stumbled upon the concept of self-compassion and decided to try it. The next time he had a presentation, he consciously practiced the steps. First, he noticed his anxiety without judgment. He thought, "Okay, I'm feeling really anxious about this presentation." Second, he reminded himself of his common humanity. He said, "Many people feel nervous about public speaking and presenting their work. This is a common fear." Third, he offered himself kindness. He gently told himself, "It's understandable that you're feeling this way. You've put a lot of effort into this work, and it's natural to want it to be well received. You're doing your best." He even took a moment to place his hand on his chest and breathe. The impact wasn't immediate perfection, but a significant shift. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, he was able to deliver his presentation with less internal resistance. He noticed that his thoughts were less overwhelming, and he could focus more on his message. Over time, as he consistently applied these practices before and after presentations, his anxiety diminished considerably. He started volunteering for more client meetings, and his confidence grew. His clients noticed his improved presentation skills, and he received a promotion within 6 months, directly attributed to his increased willingness to engage with clients. Another example is Sarah, who struggled with perfectionism and was constantly beating herself up over minor errors. If she made a typo in an email, she would spend hours replaying it in her mind, feeling like a complete failure. This self-criticism was draining her energy and making her hesitant to take on new projects for fear of making another mistake. She started practicing self-compassion by acknowledging her perfectionistic tendencies without harsh judgment. When she noticed herself dwelling on a small error, she would pause and say, "This is my tendency to be a perfectionist, and it's causing me distress." Then she'd connect to her common humanity by thinking, "Everyone makes mistakes, and it's okay to not be perfect." Finally, she would offer herself kindness by saying, "It's understandable that you want to do good work, but this mistake doesn't define your competence. You are learning and growing." She began to track her progress. Instead of spending hours ruminating over a single typo, she found herself spending only a few minutes acknowledging the feeling and then moving on. This saved her an average of 5 to 7 hours per week that she previously spent in self-recrimination. This reclaimed time and mental energy allowed her to be more creative and productive. She started taking on more challenging projects, and her work quality actually improved because she was no longer paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. Her colleagues noticed her increased confidence and her ability to handle pressure with more ease, and she received recognition for her innovative contributions. And then there's David, a middle-aged man who had always felt like he wasn't good enough because he hadn't achieved the same level of financial success as some of his peers. This belief had led him to avoid financial planning and investment, as he felt he had nothing valuable to contribute. He was stuck in a loop of self-judgment and avoidance. He began by acknowledging his feelings of inadequacy without letting them define him. He would say, "I'm noticing a feeling of not being good enough when I think about my finances." He then connected to his common humanity, reminding himself that financial journeys are diverse and that comparison is often a distorted lens. He'd think, many people have different paths to financial well-being, and it's a complex journey for everyone. His act of self-kindness involved reframing his internal dialogue. Instead of thinking, "I'm a failure," he started saying, "It's understandable that I feel this way, but my worth isn't solely tied to my financial status. I can learn and make positive changes from where I am now." He started taking small steps, like reading books on personal finance and setting up a simple budget. Within a year, he had a clear financial plan, had started investing a small amount regularly, and felt a significant reduction in his financial anxiety. He reported feeling more empowered and less ashamed when discussing his finances, which had a positive ripple effect on his overall well-being and his relationships. So what is one single action you can take today, right now, to begin cultivating this essential mental framework? It's simple, yet profound. Find a quiet moment, perhaps in the next hour, and simply place your hand over your heart. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. As you exhale, gently say to yourself, "May I be kind to myself." You don't need to analyze your feelings or try to fix anything. Just that simple acknowledgement, that gentle offering of kindness, is the first step. It's a small seed planted, and like any seed, it needs consistent care to grow. But today, you can start that process. The journey from self-criticism to self-compassion is not a race. It's a gentle unfolding. It's about learning to see yourself not as a project to be perfected, but as a beloved companion on this human adventure. Remember the shadow analogy. It doesn't disappear when you turn around, but it loses its power to terrify. Your perceived flaws, your past mistakes, your moments of vulnerability, they are not enemies to be vanquished, but parts of your story to be understood and embraced. By choosing kindness over criticism, you are not opting out of life's challenges. You are equipping yourself with the most powerful tool for navigating them with resilience, grace, and authentic joy. You are learning to be your own safe harbor in the stormy seas of life. And that, my friend, is a gift that keeps on giving.